Brett Gilliland here with Elite Entrepreneurs. I just had an amazing conversation with the Real Jason Duncan on his show, The Root of All Success. And I can't tell you how fun it was for me to just jam with the Real Jason Duncan. First of all, he's amazing. He's got great stuff that he shares. I was just honored to be a guest on his show. But we're talking about the stage changes in businesses and how you can break through some of those predictable challenges and hurdles to get where you want to go. Join us on that show, The Root of All Success with the Real Jason Duncan. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome to the Root of All Success with the Real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason has built multi-million-dollar businesses that have been featured in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. His life's mission now is helping entrepreneurs live what he calls #the exit lifestyle. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of The Root of All Success, the Real Jason Duncan. The Real Jason Duncan.
Well, hey there, welcome back to the show. I am the Real Jason Duncan. You can call me JD. I've got Brett Gilliland as my guest on the show today, and I had a really surprisingly interesting conversation. Not that I didn't expect it to be interesting. It just went into a very interesting place that I didn't know that's where we're going to go, because a lot of what he teaches through Elite Entrepreneurs lines up with what you are probably familiar with about what I teach. In my book, Exit Without Exiting, which if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see I'm holding a copy of that. But this is really interesting dude. So let me give you a little bit of background on him. He is the founder and CEO of the company Elite Entrepreneurs, which is a company that specializes in helping people who are running $1 million businesses grow to $10 million and beyond. And he specifically pays attention to the stages of business growth, which is what we really spent most of our time today talking about, is these different stages of growth. And I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. He was involved with the company Infusionsoft when they were doing $6 or $7 million. He came in as a consultant. They're known as Keep now, K-E-A-P, but you probably remember it as Infusionsoft. But he heard them speak. He's going to tell a little bit about that story. But he started out with them to help them with their purpose and their values and their mission at Infusionsoft, and help them grow from $7 million to $100 million in revenue. And then he spun off and did his own thing with Elite Entrepreneurs. And he is helping hundreds of seven-figure entrepreneurs grow from 7 to 8 figures. And his story is really, really fascinating. I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from Brett. So please help me welcome Brett Gilliland to the show. Hey there, Brett. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited to be here with you.
Well, us podcasters kind of really love talking to other podcasters. At least I do. I love talking to other people who run successful podcasts or popular podcasts. So I'm glad that you're on the show today. But before we get into your story, tell a little bit about your show, because the people listening to this are going to want to hear your show and tune in. So tell everybody about your show.
I appreciate that. Yeah, our show is called the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. And it's elite because, as you probably know, Jason, it's a relatively small percentage of all businesses that ever make it to that $1 million mark in revenue. And so somewhere between 3 and 5%. So if you're in that range, you are elite. And we have a whole podcast dedicated to some of the war stories of those growth stories, some of the pain, some of the triumphs, some of the keys to moving forward to that 10 million and beyond mark. So Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, we'd love to have you all there sometime.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, so everybody go check that out, because he will have yours truly as a guest on his show in the near future. And so you can hear him on my show today, and then I will be on his show as well. So you want to go check that out. So Brett, so your story is based around this concept of elite entrepreneurs. You were with Infusionsoft for years and really helped build a lot of cool stuff inside that. So why don't we just start there? Tell everybody about your role at Infusionsoft, and then we will kind of segue into how you became the elite entrepreneur guy that you are now.
Yeah. So yeah, the journey was at Infusionsoft. That company has since rebranded. So if anybody's like, where are they now? It's called Keep, Keap. Anyway, whether you call it Keep or back in the day Infusionsoft, what they do is small business marketing and sales automation. If you think of Salesforce.com for big businesses, Infusionsoft and now Keep was really focused on being the Salesforce.com for small businesses. I mean, true small businesses. So we were surrounded by tens of thousands of really small businesses who were trying to grow, and several of them would get to that seven-figure mark in revenue, and they'd start to hit some of the common challenges that stop their growth. Meanwhile, they saw us growing like crazy, having a great culture. They were interacting with our people and saying, where are you finding all these amazing people? And they wanted us to start teaching them what we did.
So Infusionsoft, how did you get started with them originally?
Oh, that's a great story. So I heard one of the co-founders there, who's the CEO, his name is Clayton Mask. He was at one of those entrepreneurial gatherings here in the Phoenix area where I'm from, and he was basically sharing the story of how a tech company here in the desert, there weren't that many successful tech companies back then, had raised Silicon Valley money, and they just got their first round of venture capital. They were doing about 6-7 million in revenue, and they were getting ready to scale. And I heard him speak, and we chatted after that and said, I can help you scale this thing the right way. And we hit it off, and kind of the rest is history.
Wow. So did you actually go on staff as an employee, or were you a contractor, or how did you do that?
Yeah. So at first, yeah, that's very, very insightful question. At first, I was just consulting, and they were one of my clients. So I did some consulting work with them for about 9 months, and I was helping them build all of their foundational purpose, values, mission kind of stuff, and building hiring processes and onboarding processes as we were scaling. And I was like, this is fun. This is me. Like, I just identified so closely with everything that they were building. I was helping them build, and yeah, Clayton and I kind of looked at each other about 9 months in and said, time for you to join this ride. So I spent 10 years there. We grew from seven figures to 100 million, and it was a great ride.
Man, so you said earlier that there's only like 3 to 5% of businesses ever hit $1 million in revenue. So $1 million in revenue, most people think that is a ton of money, and of course it is a lot of money. I mean, no matter who you are, $1 million is a lot of money. But why is it that so many businesses, so many entrepreneurs, people listening to the show, they go into business, they start businesses, and they never crack that $1 million marker in revenue? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, they actually don't do it because they don't figure out the success factors at the previous stages to that. So before we started the show, I mentioned the stages briefly. There are some pretty eerily accurate stages of small business growth. And if entrepreneurs don't figure out how to get their business past each of those stages, it's like hitting a wall. They just hit that wall or a ceiling, and they can't progress through it. So there's a stage change around 100,000 in annual revenue, then 300,000, then a million. And on these ones and threes of revenue, if you think about it, basically you're tripling the production of your current machine, and that machine needs to be leveled up. You need to shift to a new gear in order to continue to grow. And so businesses often get stuck in that 300,000 to a million range. They don't figure out the unique things that have to happen there to keep going.
So you said that there's these stages. There's these stages of business growth, and that the first stage is just up to 100, just getting up to 100. But then from 100 to 300 is a stage, and then
Yep,
from 300 to a million is a stage. And then I would assume if we just keep doing that, it's 1 to 3, and then 3 to maybe 10, because
that's
it's
right.
easier, right? So what is, in your opinion, the one thing that keeps that $100,000 business at 100,000 rather than 300,000?
Yeah, it's actually sales. oddly enough. So, I mean, maybe that's no surprise to anybody, but that first part where they're just trying to get that thing going, that idea going, where they're really just self-employed, and maybe they have a partner, but you know what I mean? They're just getting it going. That's about managing their time and figuring out where do we invest our time to get this thing off the ground. And it's really about just scraping together enough leads and managing their time. Well, if they don't figure out how to sell at any level of consistency, they never break past that 300 mark. So 100 to 300,000 is really about mastering selling. 300,000 to a million is about consistent lead generation and fulfillment at a higher level scale, right? Where you got to have more and more people serving more and more clients. And then after a million, there's another set of challenges. I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, it's really about sales early on, and then that consistent lead generation and fulfillment at a higher scale.
So a lot of people listening to this show right now, they're in that sub 300,000, and so they're under 300 grand, which probably means they're solo. Probably, they're
Yeah,
doing it
maybe
by
they got an
themselves.
assistant. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
they're not. They don't have a team. They don't have a lot of employees, and they are their primary thing. What I heard you say, Brett, is that sales is the one issue. So they've got to figure that out early, and then once they hit past that 300 mark, that 300 to $1 million range is not as much about sales as it is finding leads to sell. That's what you're saying, and then
Yes,
how do they
yeah.
build
Consistent lead generation so that you can scale those selling conversations. Um, yeah, sales at first, and you know as well as I do that it's not just about the art or the craft or the science of selling. It's about that product market fit, right? It's like, are there people who would be willing to buy from me? So they got to figure out, do I have something that people will buy, and can I get them to say yes to it? And you can do some of that up to 100,000 in revenue, but if you don't really have something that meets a real need at a price point that people will buy it, and you don't know how to present it in a way that they'll say yes, like you're not getting much further than scraping along at that sort of self-employed level.
Yeah, and that is the story, isn't it? I mean, the story of, okay, I have something that is valuable, that enough people bought it, then I hit two or $300,000 in sales, but I haven't figured out how to scale it to a place where I can get leads to come in so that I can get past a million. So if I'm hearing you right, Brett, that sales and lead generation, which is marketing, so sales and marketing are the two biggest things that you must pay attention to early in your career as an entrepreneur if you ever want to hit $1 million. And we've got companies that are out there that sell these weird technology products or subscription-based products that for some reason just it's like crack cocaine. Everybody wants it. You don't really have to market it. It just happens. But that is an anomaly. Most of us have to actually go out and pitch and get leads and market. So when you look at working with a business who's doing $1 million plus, they figure that out.
That's
What is
right.
that next stage? That next stage, that 1 to 3 million. What are those people? What are their challenges?
Well, and this is where we can throw the revenue levels aside for a second, or at least let's get really clear about what they represent. So once you hit a million plus, the revenue is just like a proxy for the complexity that they're starting to feel on the team. Now, what I mean by that is when you hit a million plus in revenue, typically it's now no longer the entrepreneur alone or the entrepreneur and a couple VAs or something, right? Like there's a team starting to form. In most service-based businesses, at that point they have 6, 8, 10 people. And it's that level of complexity where now the entrepreneur can no longer be the hub through which everything flows, right? Or the bottleneck, as you and I know really well. They now have to figure out how to set a vision and organize work in a way that a growing team can take targeted, coordinated action. And that's the thing that trips most people up at a million in revenue. Is it's not the revenue mark isn't the thing, it's the complexity of the team and what has to happen in order for that team to continue to take this thing further.
Well, so I'm making a note here. So what I heard you say is that the complexity going from 1 million to 3 is based on this entrepreneur getting out of the center of the business, that he or she can no longer be the one thing, the one superstar, the hero, as I call it the hero syndrome. They've got to break free from the hero syndrome to start delegating, building the right teams, and doing those things, which is interesting that you say that, because that is my entire coaching program is built on that concept, is that the entrepreneur can no longer be the hero. The entrepreneur has to get out of the center or the business can never grow. And frankly, you're never going to have any business worth anything. You're just going to have a glorified job. So if building teams is what the people in the $1 to $3 million need to grow, what's that next stage, that 3 to net 10, which seems to be a big void of people in the marketplace? What are these people having to struggle with to get to that 3 to 10?
Yeah. So
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur, I know that you have to deal with sales on a regular basis. I mean, every entrepreneur does. And if you aren't paying attention to sales as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. But I've got a sponsor of this show called Dub that helps you bring the personal back to sales. If you want to figure out how to improve content creation, improve client trust, improve your sales process, decrease the sales cycle, because we all know time kills deals. If you want to increase client bookings and increase conversions, you need to take a look at Dub. There's a special offer for Dub for listeners to The Root of All Success at therealjasonduncan.com/Dub, and that's DUBB. What Dub does, I've been using this for years. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so honored that they're our primary sponsor of the podcast. But they have helped over 60,000 businesses around the world communicate better, to make sales easier, to make sales more personal. And Dub is built for growing teams. I mean, you can set up video emails, you can set up custom onboarding, you can do admin reporting, anything you need around video and sales and automation. Dub is there. You can try Dub now. Your conversions to sales are waiting. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. And there you're going to get 2 weeks for free to try Dub. Plus, you're going to get 50% off your first 2 months of Dub. You can't beat that. So go check it out. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
Let me say one more thing about the 1 to 3 real quick. And I could tell that you and I could just jam on this for hours, if not days, right? So if you think about gritty, scrappy founder entrepreneur to get from 0 to 1 million, right? Those early stages, if they're learning how to sell, they're learning how to market, they're learning how to scale their operations, right? Like, that's learn and do. And then they're in the middle of it all because they created it all, just like you said. And now it's time to go from gritty, scrappy founder to capable business building CEO. That transition to leader is 1 to 3 million. And most entrepreneurs I know, that, like, they don't want to hear that a lot of this journey is about leadership. They're like, we just need to market and sell more. Like, it's just more about revenue generation. Yeah. And that is true. Those systems do have to mature. But the key success factors for continuing to scale are more around building the systems and processes internally to start doing that and having that entrepreneur become a leader. So 1 to 3 million is about doing and going from learning and doing to now leading people and organizing work. And that's a big transition.
Well, that leadership point, I think that's a good point before we talk about 3 to 10. This goes back to this thing I call the hero syndrome. The hero of the business is the person that says, look, I can do this better than everybody else. And the reality is he's right. I mean, when you start a business, you are better than everybody else. You know it better. You're more attached to it emotionally, strategically, financially. You're attached, and you can do it better. And that will get you to probably $500,000, maybe $1 million in revenue, but it ain't going to take you beyond that. I always use the example of the biggest companies in the world today, the Apples and the Googles of the world. those entrepreneurs, when they started that, they had to transition out of that hero syndrome fast. Otherwise, we would not know we wouldn't know Steve Jobs. If he maintained, the hero syndrome early, Apple would not have been who we are. He had to transition from hero to leader. And that, I love that you're saying that, Brett. What have you found in your experience of leading companies through these transitions? What are the biggest challenges of making leadership become something that they focus on and can actually execute?
Well, sometimes we do this in a little bit of a backdoor sort of way. Again, most business owners that we're working with aren't looking for how to be a better leader. Typically, I mean, there's some enlightened ones, like they get it and they want to be a better leader from the start. But most of the time, they're just like, I'm hitting a block, right? And I want to move past that. What do we do? And we teach them a scaling method. We call it our elite growth method. But along the way, we're helping them do the work in a way that involves their team, and they start to step into leading them to co-create a future together that is really powerful. So we use some structure and some tried and true principles and best practices to lead them through doing some work that has them stepping into leadership.
So what are those practices? Do you mind sharing a couple of those things that people, because I mean, leadership is this ethereal, we know
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what it is, but like it's kind of like I know what it is when I see it, but I don't know how to define it. So
Yeah.
so what
Yeah,
what are some of those
yeah,
practices?
I'm happy to share our version of that, right? I mean, there's lots of views on this, but for seven-figure business owners who are trying to scale, we say get rid of all the other hats, but you keep these three hats. Like these are the ones that are your responsibility as the leader of the business. Number one is set the vision. And we'll talk more about that. I'm sure you and I could talk about that for a long time. Number two is build the team. And number three, we won't talk about as much, but will be very familiar to our listeners here. Number three is get the resources. But our favorite way of saying that is don't run out of cash, right? Or don't run out of money. It's like we need the financial runway to continue to pursue the vision. So, number one job, super clear on the vision. And I'll let you lead us however you want on that conversation, but that's where we start.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, and it's interesting that that's your number one thing. I teach something called the law of the architect. And some of my listeners are familiar with this, but the law of the architect states that there are three primary roles of the entrepreneur. And that number one is set the vision, which is very interesting. It's the same thing I teach, set the vision. Our twos and threes are different semantically, but are probably the same thing practically. My second one would be communicate that vision. Because if just the fact that you have it doesn't matter if you're not communicating that vision, which lines up with your build the team. Because if you're building the team, they understand the vision, they buy into it, they know where we're going, know what we're trying to accomplish. And the third role is build the asset, which is how do you build this thing so that the business itself is worth something and that it's not just tied to me. And I think that probably practically getting the resources and building the asset go hand in hand, because you can't build the asset without the resources. So I love that vision is the first thing. Now, when we talk about, I know what I mean when I say vision, but when you talk to your people you're contracted with, you're coaching and you're helping, when you say to them, "Hey, your job now, Mr. Entrepreneur who's doing $1 million a year, is to set the vision." That's number one. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah. So years and years ago, I just fell in love with all of Jim Collins' work. I love it. Built to Last is a title I took on back in the day when I was working at, I'll call it Keep. When I was working at that software company, I was the Built to Last director. I called myself the Built to Last champion because we wanted to build a great enduring company. And all of that backstory there with Jim Collins is just to set up that I love his structure for it. Vision setting to us means getting super clear with your team, not at your team, with your team around purpose, values, and mission. The why, the who or the how, right? Like who we are, how we operate, and the specific destination oriented objective. That's our mission right now. And it's a what by when sort of format. So high level clarity, alignment comes out of those three elements of setting the vision: purpose, values, mission.
So when you set this vision, which I believe is a preferred future. This is where we want to go. It's going to require, what is our purpose? What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? And then what values do we hold moving through that? Because there are some companies that have very different values, and they're in the same industry. I mean, you can see that probably most clearly in the fast food market. I would think you can go into a McDonald's and you can go into a Chick-fil-A, for example, and
Yeah.
you can immediately tell their purpose, their mission, and their values are very, very different. Which means that changes the customer experience. So as if we can see that we get treated a certain way at Chick-fil-A versus treated a certain way at McDonald's, that doesn't mean they both won't provide us sustenance in the moment of need. but our experience as that customer is going to be very different in how we interact. If that happens in fast food for hamburgers and chicken, then that's also going to happen if you're selling software, if you're selling coaching services. Like people's interaction, their experience with you is going to be different. I love that your vision is based on what you're teaching your people about purpose, purpose, values, and mission. So on building the team, let me ask you about this on the three roles. You said that first set the vision, second build the team, third get the resources. What is your, and I'm sure it may, well, I would assume it's different for different industries, but if an entrepreneur came to you and said, listen, I did 1.25 million last year. I've got a small team, I got an assistant, and I got a salesperson. I want to scale, and they know that you say they have to build the team. Is there certain types of people on the team that have to be put in to make that scale happen?
That's a good question. I probably want to clarify build the team a little bit, because I can hear people saying, I don't want to just go hire people to build the team just because that's that's my next role. But build the team is about, if we have this clarity of vision, we know there's work that's going to have to happen. So build the team actually starts with organizing work, and it's about getting clear about how we'll organize that work in the future when the mission is complete. So we do a future org chart type of activity that helps people get really clear about the future team when we're doing the level of business at mission accomplished, right? So let's say you created a mission that by the end of 2027, we're going to be, I don't know, the number one X kind of company in the greater DC area, right? With, I don't know, 10,000 units sold or 10,000 customers served or whatever. So there's a measurable what by when. Well, what would the team have to look like if that mission were to come true by the end of 2027? And we want to get really clear about what that work looks like. Then we're going to build our team toward that. So it's not a one size fits all answer, as you might assume. Sorry, it's not. You would assume it would be one size fits all. As you might guess, it's not one size fits all. It's very mission specific. It's very vision specific for a team to know, okay, what's our next key hire if we're building towards that future?
Yeah, well, and I would assume as much because, a software company versus a home service company versus a finance-based company, those are all going to be very different. I run several companies. I have a home service base. I have a construction company. I have my coaching company, which is the main thing I operate. All those are going to need different team members. I've got one company that has 20 some odd employees. I got another company has one employee. It just depends on what we're doing. Now the revenues are different, and who we're serving is different. But I want to go to that next level if we could, because I think this is a lot of people listening to the show are in this. They want to go from that 3 to 10. They want to be in that range, because that lifestyles can start changing between 3 and 10. That's when the entrepreneur starts being able to have a little bit more financial freedom, because if you're doing $3 to $5 million in revenue and you're the owner of a small, that company, you should be bringing home quite a bit of money, as much as maybe $500,000 to $1 million a year if you're doing it right. And so that's when life changes. But to move beyond 3 to 10, that changes it even more. So what is the stage? What are the challenges in that stage? We talk about sales in the first stage, lead gen and fulfillment in the second stage, and then you got building teams and leadership in that third. But if we're moving from 3 to 10, what's the biggest challenges there in that stage?
Yeah, so we haven't really used the C word yet of culture, but in that 1 to 3 million range, we're taking the entrepreneur out of the machine, like we talked about, right? We're trying to have him or her not be the bottleneck. So we're moving that person to capable business building CEO. That's the first step. From 3 to 10, that same thing is happening, that same elevating in the level of contribution in the business or the value that a leader can deliver is happening in the functions or the teams. So at first, it's just get the entrepreneur out of the middle of it and have them be the leader, 1 to 3. 3 to 10, now we've got a revenue leader, and we've got a fulfillment or a product leader, and we've got, a finance leader. And so we're having to take individuals who were doing everything in those different areas, and we're starting to build teams across those areas. So from 3 to 10 million is when a bona fide leadership team needs to come together. It begins in 1 to 3 million, but by in the 3 to 10 range, it is a must that we have a senior leadership team, and that those culture pieces began to form in 1 to 3 million. I mean, they began before that, but you began to solidify them in 1 to 3 million. They really have to be built into everything that you're doing in 3 to 10 million. So, um, again, all along the way, your sales and marketing machines have to be leveling up. Like, all of that's important. And we got to figure out some of these larger organization complexity things as we're scaling.
I love it. I actually, this type of stuff is really what as a business coach myself, and I'm working with clients that are doing this 3 to 10. That's kind of that's my avatar who I work with. I love this because putting in that leadership team, continue to build the culture, really solidifying the culture. Because once, and this probably better than most, is that once your employee count runs past about 20, if you haven't set the culture at that point, you're probably going to lose it. You're going to lose control over it as much as you would have had before 20 employees. But I remember very clearly and distinctly when my lighting and electrical company went past 20 employees, watching things change. The things that would never have happened in the past started to happen. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So you got to be ready for that. And so Brett, I love this. So I'm going to shift to kind of the final segment of our show. And I want to really talk about success. So success is defined very differently for everybody. Everybody has a different opinion of what that means. But I want you, before I ask your definition of it, if you look at all the people you've helped, you got Infusionsoft, obviously is a big one. You took from $7 to $100 million. Congratulations, by that way. That's amazing. What is your one key to the success that you've been able to accomplish? If you had to look back and all the things that you did, you had to narrow it down to one thing. What is that one thing that helped Brett Gilliland become so successful?
I appreciate that question. It's one of those that makes you think a little bit, makes me look off into the distance and try to grab out of the air the one thing. I guess I'm a big intentionality guy. And so if I could cheat a little bit, the one thing would be intentionality married with discipline. It's like, let's get really clear about what we want. And then let's organize everything around us, including and especially our behavior, to map to that. So that's what I would say. Intentionality with aligned behavior.
All right. So I love that. Now, how do you define the word success? How do you say, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. And I'm going to lean more on the idea of integrity here. It's like people living consistent with who they are. I think financial success, I think, recognition, accolades, all that kind of stuff that happens comes when people are who they were meant to be. It's like, let's get clear on who I am and let's align my life to that. Let's be that. And that, to me, that's success.
I love it. Now, if you use that definition of consistency and integrity, by that definition, are you a successful person?
By that definition, I'm continually striving to be successful. That's a never-ending game to me. And so, I mean, from before the show, my wife and I were blessed with 8 beautiful, wonderful children. They're all getting older. You can imagine how much of my time, how much of my life pours into that, right? That's a big part of my life. Business ownership, helping other businesses do what matters in their life. That's another big chunk of my life. So the intentionality and the consistency is the only way I can take all of the things. And you own multiple businesses. How can you keep it all happening if you're not super clear, super intentional, and super consistent in the way you show up and how you pull other people along. Anyway, to me, that's just a fulfilling life.
Yeah. Well, so if you had to speak directly to the listener today, who is an entrepreneur, we don't know what revenue range he's in, but if you just had to give one specific but general, I know that's kind of contradictory, a specific piece of advice, but general because you don't know where they are in their growth cycle. What piece of advice would you give to that entrepreneur today based on what you know about success and growth?
My one piece of advice is to get really clear about what you're about, right? Get really clear about the why, and then get really clear about the objective and line everything else up to go chase after that.
Now, do you, when you say get clear about your why, are you speaking to the know your why like Simon Sinek, or is there a different spin on it behind it?
No, I mean, yeah, like Simon Sinek. It's like, why? I mean, selling widgets, providing a service, making money. I think we all get to do those things. We all have to do those things to some extent. But what's the meaning behind it? What's the impact you want to have
Yeah.
in the world? What's the cause? What are you passionate about? What are you uniquely gifted to go out there and do? Why not spend your life's energy doing that? You enjoy it anyway.
Yeah.
You know that it feels good when you go and have an impact. I think we just turn too many of us just turn wrenches or add numbers or, time to make the donuts. You're old enough to remember those Dunkin' Donuts commercials. The guy
Yes.
wakes up at 4 a.m. Time to make the donuts. I don't want one of those lives. I want one that's filled with meaning. And so we need to start there. Who am I? What am I put here to do? And if you're like, well, there is no such thing as a bigger universe or whatever, then fine, just put your own creative imprint on it. Who do I want to be? What do I want to create? And go after that, but do something meaningful.
Well, everybody, I want to encourage you to go check Brett out at growwithelite.com. That's growwithelite.com. He's also on LinkedIn. He's got Elite Entrepreneurs on LinkedIn. You can look that up, Elite Entrepreneurs. I'll put it in the show notes for the links. And then you can follow Brett at Built to Last Champ, Built the number 2 Last Champ on LinkedIn. Just search Brett Gilliland. You'll find him on there. Follow him, connect with him on Facebook at Grow with Elite as well. Go listen to the Elite Entrepreneurs podcast. I think that if this is the type of stuff he talks about on his show, you definitely want to go listen to it because this is where you are, Mr. Listener, Mrs. Listener. This is where you need to get past these stages of growth for your small business. Brett, I'm going to give you the last word today on the show. Anything you want to say, promote, tell people to get in touch with you, whatever you want to say, last word is yours.
Thank you. I think I've said too many words, but here's the last word. If you're an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur. Here's what I want to say. I want to honor you first and foremost. Entrepreneurship is not easy. And no matter how close they get to you, your loved ones, your key team members, your right-hand person, no matter how close they get to you, they may see the effects of carrying that weight on you. They may see the stress. They may see the difficult moments of like really hard decisions. Nobody fully understands it until they bear the weight of that themselves. And so I just want to honor all of you who do that. You are the ones that create everything in our world. You create value. You create opportunities for people. And it's not easy. And so I just honor you first and foremost. And then I say, there are proven things that have been figured out that will help you get through some of those challenging things that you're facing to get to the next level. And at Elite Entrepreneurs, we're honored to work with people like the Real Jason Duncan to help you guys figure that stuff out.
Well, Brett, thanks for being on the show. Congrats on your success. And hopefully we'll connect again real soon.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Well, there you have it. A very interesting and successful entrepreneur sharing his journey to success. You know, these stages of business growth, I want to do just a quick recap. This 0 to like 100 to 300 million in that, or excuse me, 100 million, 100,000 to 300,000. Your primary thing you need to focus on, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, is getting your sales locked in. That's it. And then that next stage, going from $300,000 to $1 million, it's about lead generation, fulfillment. It's about getting a marketing plan put together to get the leads and being able to fulfill that. And then that next stage, going from $1 million to $3 million, is about building your teams that don't rely on you. You've got to be out of the daily operations of your business. You cannot be the central hub in the way your business operates. You got to transition to a leader. And then if you want to move from 3 million up to 10, that's when you really have to start creating a leadership team, continue building culture intentionally. If you want to learn more about this, go check out the Elite Entrepreneurs podcast. Go follow everything Brett's doing. Go check him out at Grow with Elite. Make sure you tell them that you heard about them on my show, The Root of All Success. And I think you're going to find a lot of interesting information there. Now, look, one of the things that Brett said is that you really need to follow your why you're doing this. And I can imagine that everybody listening to the show has got a different why, but they're going to relate to probably one of 2 to 3, maybe 5 things. And family is going to be on that list. Your why behind why you're building your business has to do something with your family, your friends, those that are closest to you. And if you are spending 60 plus hours a week doing your business, what are you doing? You're stealing time from the thing that you say is the most important from you. I want to invite you to book a free breakthrough call with me. And this breakthrough call would be an opportunity for you to look at your situation and why you're doing what you're doing. And I've got a free 14-minute training that you can go take 100% for free to decide if this breakthrough call is something you even want to do. I want you to go to therealjasonduncan.com/VSL. That stands for Video Sales Letter. So therealjasonduncan.com/VSL. Go check that out. Watch that 14-minute training on what I'm talking about. And then if you want to book a breakthrough call, it's 100% free, and it's guaranteed to get you a breakthrough in where you are in your business to get back to the why, just like Brett talked about. Thank you for listening, subscribing, leaving us a review. Make sure you hit that button on YouTube to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified of when I release new content. I release at least 2 of these long-form educational podcast videos every single week, plus other educational information that you as an entrepreneur are going to need to learn. So go check that on YouTube at youtube.com/therealjasonduncan. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for this show, what are you waiting on? Go do it. This is a good show. I know you like it. You're listening to it. You're still here. So please go leave me that podcast review. I would really appreciate it. Please tune in again next time when I talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, I am the real Jason Duncan. And as always, you know what I'm saying. Jesus is king.
Attention business owners.
Attention business owners.
Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.